Good morning and welcome to the Daily Tanya. Today is Friday, the 26th day of Kislev. Today is the second day of Hanukkah. We lit last night the second candle, which, as the Rebbe mentioned, is a very, very powerful message that although the first night we lit one candle and we performed the mitzvah perfectly, yet another day comes, we need to add in the light. Should be עוד יותר אור ועוד יותר אור. Should be more light and more light. Should be better and better. We need to keep growing. So let's begin today's lesson with tzedakah. Once again, Gedola tzedakah shemekareves esgeula. Tzedakah brings Mashiach closer. And today we're learning the second half of chapter 3. The Alter Rebbe talks about knowing God and connecting to God. And we discussed yesterday about the Chachma and Bina. And we said that the intellect, Chachma is the wisdom, which is awareness of an idea. The Bina is the processing of the idea, the understanding. And we said that the intellect births emotions. When you understand, it leads you to feel. However, we mentioned briefly that really there is a gap between the understanding, the world of knowledge, and the world of feelings. Indeed, sometimes people can understand very well, but it doesn't affect their emotions, doesn't affect their actions. You can have professors, doctors who will explain you how smoking is bad for you. And then you go outside of the hospital and see those same doctors are standing and smoking. You can understand something and it doesn't affect you deeply. And here the Alter Rebbe will explain the concept of das. The das is the knowledge. It is the connecting. This is the part of the intellect that one meditates upon and connects with it. And that is in general a concept in Chabad. Hasidus, they focus a lot about the importance of not only studying and understanding intellectually, but really connecting to it. Part of the things is when you, in addition to just studying it in the books, you just take time to meditate upon what you study. In addition to that, there's also the Farbrengens. You sit down and you marinate in the things that you study. You talk about it and you connect to it. And Alter Rebbe is going to give us the ways of how to connect, how to think and understand godliness, which will lead us to the feelings of love and fear of Hashem, or fear and love of Hashem. And it says when you think about the greatness of Hashem, and it talks about the 3 steps. Step number 1, you think about the way Hashem fills the world. You think about the nature. Think about all the beautiful things you have in this world, and how Hashem is just like the soul fills the body and animates every part of the body. Hashem fills the world. Alter Rebbe talks about it briefly here. Later on in Tanya, Alter Rebbe expands on it more. And that's step number 1. Step number 2, you think about the greatness of Hashem, which is encompassing the world. Meaning that the light of Hashem is so powerful that the world is not even capable to receive that great light. And using in the human terms, this is for example, the will of a person. The will of a person is not really in any organ, any particular organ. It's a general feeling. It's a general power that we have, the power of will, which is encompassing the entire person. The same thing, Hashem is Sovev Kolam, encompassing the world. And then there is Kule Kamei Kolei Chashiv, how everything, Hashem is so much greater than that the world doesn't have any value at all in the eyes of Hashem. It's so insignificant. So that leads a person to the feeling of awe of Hashem, realizing how small we are. And then it goes the next step. After you have these three steps, you have the feeling of love to Hashem. When you realize how small you are, and yet Hashem is here, and Hashem gives us life, and you realize we are nothing compared to Hashem, this gives us also the feeling of love and wanting to connect to this great source of our life, the great Hashem. So let's look inside, see how the Alter Rebbe continues. The Alter Rebbe in chapter 3. Ki haseichel shebenefesh hamaskelos, kashem izboinenu ma'amik me'oid begdulas Hashem. But when the intellect in the rational soul deeply contemplates and immerses itself exceedingly in the greatness of God. Because here, as you remember, we spoke about the two souls. We have the godly soul and the animal soul. Now the Alter Rebbe focuses on the godly soul. That's what the godly soul is doing, is focusing on the greatness of Hashem. How he fills all worlds. V'soivev kol almin. And the step number 2 is, or when he contemplates how he encompasses all worlds, how the world, the power of Hashem's light is so intense, it is encompassing the world. And then the third level, when one contemplates another aspect of God's greatness, namely how in His presence all creation is considered as naught, as nothing. When you contemplate this, upon contemplating and immersing itself in any of the above mentioned aspects of God's greatness, the midah of awe, the attribute of awe for the divine majesty, will be born and aroused in one's mind and thoughts. To fear and be humbled before His blessed greatness, which is without end or limit. And then the feeling gets more intense, and there will also be born a dread of God in his heart. Of course, a dread, we're talking about in a positive way, the way you're standing in front of greatness. I had this chus to be in front of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Standing in front of greatness, you feel the awe, the deep awe, how you're so small. That gives a little understanding, a little grasping when we think about the greatness of Hashem. Then, after when you realize the greatness of Hashem, and still Hashem is our source, and Hashem gives us life, that in turn also brings out the feeling of love of Hashem, how you want to be connected to this greatness. Next, this contemplation will give birth to the attribute of chesed, attribute of kindness, attribute of love, expressed as a love of God, so that his heart will glow with an intense love of God, like fiery flames, with a passion, desire, and longing, and a yearning soul. Each of these expressions, the fire, flame, the passion, and so on, denoting a different grade of love towards the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof. Vehi klois hanefesh. This is what is meant by the term klois hanefesh. What is klois hanefesh? A consuming passion of the soul. We know the story in the Torah about the children of Aaron, the priest, Aaron Cohen, Nadav and Aviv, when they enter the Holy of Holies and their soul expired out of love of Hashem. The feeling of love of Hashem, wanting to be out of your body and being connected to the greatness of God, that caused the soul to expire. Obviously, that wasn't the purpose, and God instructed us that the purpose is to be here. Yes, but you have this desire to go out, but ultimately one needs to know, one needs to come back, because the purpose is to feel our mission in this world. But this is the idea of Klois HaNefesh. K'dichsiv nichsef avagam kol sa nafshi v'geimer, u'ksiv tzoma nafshi l'ekim v'geimer, u'ksiv tzoma locha nafshi v'geimer. As it is written, my soul longs for you. Indeed, it faints. And written another verse the Alter Rebbe brings is, my soul thirsts for God. And again, third verse, my soul thirsts for you. These three verses the Alter Rebbe quotes correspond to the three levels of contemplation the Alter Rebbe spoke earlier about, thinking about the way of Hashem filling the world, and the way Hashem encompasses the world, and the world is nothing in the presence of Hashem. Now, this loving thirst is derived from the element of fire in the divine soul. You have the element of fire and the element of water. Fire is passionate, seeking upwards. Water is cold and going downwards. So the fire represents the passion, the love of Hashem. The water is more the intellect, which is cold. As the student of natural science affirm, and so it is in Eitz Chaim, the element of fire is in the heart, while the source of the element of water and moisture is in the brain. As explained in Eitz Chaim Portal 50, the source of the element of water is the level of Chachma, the wisdom, which is called the water of the divine soul. So this leads to the creation of the birth of the love and the fear, which is Chesed and Gevurah, the first two emotive attributes. But then you have the other emotive attributes, they're all branches of these two, the fear and the love. The rest of the remaining 5 midas are all offshoots and derivatives of fear and love, and obviously they too are born of Chachma and Bina, as is explained elsewhere. So now the Alter Rebbe goes on to explain the third element of the intellect. As we said before, you have the intellect, it's understanding, and you have the emotions, but really there is a gap, and you need to have the bridge, and that is the das. The das is the knowing and contemplating deeply. And the word das, knowledge, the Alter Rebbe brings from Genesis when it talks about Adam being intimate with Chava. The Torah uses that term, Yoda. He knew, Adam knew Chava. So we see that the idea of knowing is really connecting, deeply connecting. Das, who is etymologically may be found in the verse, and Adam knew Eve, that implies attachment and union. And in terms of meditating in godliness, means that it's not enough that you understand godliness, but you have to connect to it, deeply concentrating deeply and connecting to it. ויסקה מחשבתה בחוזק בגדולת אין סוף ברוך הוא ואינו מסיח דייתה. As it applies to das of the divine soul, it means binding one's mind with a very firm, strong bond and firmly fixing one's thought on the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof without diverting his mind from it. So meaning the subject matter conceived in Chachma and developed in Binah is absorbed in the mind by contracting, by concentration, which is das. And he explains, he says, Dal Rebbe ki af mishu chacham v'novim megdulas ein sof baruch hu, ine, im lo yekasha daitei, v'iska machshavtei v'chozek v'asmoda lo yelid b'nafshay ira v'ava amitis ki'im dimyonas shach. He says, for even one who is wise and understanding in the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof, yet, unless he applies his das and fixes his thought firmly and diligently on his understanding of God's greatness, he will not produce in his soul true fear and love, but only vain fancies. You can think you love Hashem, but it's not. To love Hashem, to really develop a feeling of love, you truly need to fix your mind deeply and concentrate on this concept. Das, ukiyum amidas v'chayusan. Therefore, says the Alter Rebbe, the das provides the substance and vitality of the midas, and is therefore termed the mother of the midas, another parent, side by side with the Chachma and Bina. And it comprises chesed and gevura, that is to say, love with those other midas that are its offshoots and fear with its offshoots. So this, the Alter Rebbe gives the understanding of what is das. There is a story that was told. One of the mashpim, the teachers, the mentors in Lubavitch, used to give the example and knowing to understand what is the concept of das. And give the example of one back in the days there was people lived in farms and fields. There were peasants and they were illiterate, but they wanted to their children they should study Torah, they should learn how to read and so on. So they hired melamdim, a teacher, to come from a city and to teach the children. The teacher, the melamed, would also read the letters that the people received because they couldn't read. And then one day, the father of the child receives a letter notifying him that his father passed away. And he couldn't read it, so he asked the melamed, the teacher, to read it for him. So when the melamed read it, the father of the child collapsed. He fainted. And the question the mashpia asked, how come the teacher who understands the letter, he read it, he saw it with his own eyes reading it, he didn't just hear it, he read it with his own eyes, and he didn't collapse. But the father, the father of the child, the son of the deceased, when he heard it, he passed away. And obviously the answer is obvious, because he connected to what it said. The teacher just read it. He understood it very well, but it doesn't affect him. And that's the idea of das. Das is to know something. When we study about the greatness of Hashem, we should not just understand this. We should contemplate, meditate, and see how this affects our life and how we are nothing. And the more we connect to it, the more we develop that connection with Hashem. And ultimately that connection with Hashem will lead the whole world to be illuminated with the light of the Torah, the light of Hanukkah. Have a happy Hanukkah. Don't forget today, before Shabbos, before the Shabbos candles, we light the third Hanukkah candle. Have a good Shabbos and a happy Hanukkah.